Hello and welcome to Scilence, a podcast that gives women in science, technology, engineering and maths, or STEM, an opportunity to share honestly and openly about what it's really like working in these typically male-dominated subjects. Each week, one woman shares her stories and experiences. She could be a public figure, the girl next door, or someone from a far-off land. The point is she'll be deliberately kept anonymous and disguised to ensure that we're not distracted by the details of her achievements, her labels, or what she looks like. I'm Dr. Shanice O'Mara, also a woman in STEM. I studied mechanical engineering and ended up as a television broadcaster. I've worked on and reported on some cutting-edge technology and innovation over the years. And of course, through my television work, I've met some incredible women from a diverse range of STEM fields. And you know what? I've been more amazed about what I've learned from these women when the cameras have been turned off and they're just being themselves. These women have amazingly impressive CVs, but most importantly, they're human, just like the rest of us. And it's that off-air honesty that I'd like to share with you through Scilence. This week, my guest is in the field of molecular microbiology and immunology with an interest in going into epidemiology. Hi!
Hi!
Thank you so much for coming on this show. That was a bit of a mouthful, what you're actually studying. It's amazing.
Yes, honestly, it was like the immunology aspect of it was what drew me to it, because it's the thing that's closest to epidemiology.
Okay, so for all those that can barely pronounce it like me, can you explain what you do?
So epidemiology is there's field work and then there's research, and what I'm looking into doing is field work. And so basically it's like working with outbreaks. That's what I specifically want to go into is outbreaks and disease control with the CDC. So I think like to give it like an image as if you've ever seen the movie Outbreak. Like they're the people that are like they go and investigate, like Ebola outbreaks or something, and they wear the big hazmat suits. They also look at like the demographics of outbreaks to try and figure out ways to like create solutions for the problems based on like population and areas and stuff like that.
Okay, so that sounds really specific. What got you into that?
It was actually, it's been like a very roundabout journey to this, because when I first went to school, like right out of high school, I wasn't actually very good at science and math. So like I never even thought about looking at like a science field because it just always seemed like something that was so far out of my league. So I started with journalism, and then I decided like I just didn't want to be in school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I dropped out. And then when I went back to school, like a little bit later, I went back to school for nursing because I thought nursing sounded universal and it sounds like, job security kind of thing. But as I was going to school, like I realized I didn't really want to be a nurse. So that turned into chemistry, and then chemistry turned into biochemistry. But then when I was in biochemistry, I realized that what was really fascinating to me was viruses and bacteria. Like the more that I learned about them, the more that I kind of, it sounds creepy, but like admire the intelligence of like such a tiny basic being. And, most people don't even think that they're alive. But so for me, it was like the option was, I looked at first virology, but then I realized that I didn't really want to be in a research lab, that I thought being out in the field would be something that I would rather do. And epidemiology was what gave me that option. And so it's been a very like weird journey to get to this point. So
I also struggled with sciences, but I always knew that the end goal was mechanical engineering. But it sounds like you were always kind of just following your gut instinct from the beginning, which led you to where you are today.
Yeah, I honestly am grateful for the path that I came on, because like I feel like science wasn't something, well actually, okay, so like when I was younger, I loved my dad. I really, really, really loved my dad, but he was not always the best when it came to support, because like, so I wasn't good at math, and I wasn't like good, like for my whole entire life, I just haven't been good at math. And I remember saying that I wanted to be a doctor, and my dad said that I wasn't good at math, so I shouldn't be a doctor. And like, I think that really stuck with me in a way that was like, okay, like, I guess, like, in some way that makes sense. And so, like, it was never like an option for me. And I think nursing for me when I came back to school seemed like, I don't want to say, I guess it seemed like an easier path than being a doctor. I guess like so it was kind of like the it was like me not really believing in myself, but like maybe I'll try it kind of thing. And then like when I got into chemistry, like I realized that this was something that I was actually good at. And then it became more of like this realization, thankfully, that for me and like science, it wasn't about like not being intelligent enough because I understood the classes that I was in. Like it took work. Like it took a lot of work. Like, I was in classes with people who just seemed to innately understand what it was that they were doing and what was going on. But it was just like over time, I became able to like look into harder stuff and like the possibility of harder stuff because, I was given. I started to believe like in a greater thing, like in a greater thing in the universe, and like why not? Why not? Why couldn't I be like a virologist, or why couldn't I be like a PhD, something really crazy, that like I see and I'm very impressed by, because it was just like I came to understand that it was just about hard work. And I feel like there's this social stigma that like people put on themselves too, like that, like they automatically put that barrier on themselves where, oh, I couldn't possibly, so it blocks them. And so thankfully I came to this understanding of like, well, why not? And like just understood that it wasn't about having like the innate intelligence of the person next to me, but I was determined and I was willing to work hard, because I feel like that's what most of these classes require is just like, it's just a bunch of hard work. It's not like impossible work.
It sounds as though you were encouraged by your own achievements.
Yeah, because like I would find that I was getting straight A's, in classes that like in chemistry when I was in high school, I had like an emotional breakdown because I found it to be so hard. And then here I was like in classes that were doubly hard than what I was taking in high school, and I was getting good grades. Like so it became, like I understood the work and saw that it didn't have anything to do with like, okay, so I wasn't great at math, but as long as like I worked hard at it, I was still able to get, as good or better grades than the person who was already like good at science and math.
So what was driving you? Because some people are completely put off by hard work.
I think unfortunately that's just like fear of failure. So I guess it's like for me, it's like this underlying anxiety of I was committed to this path because the end goal is what I want. And so like the fear of failure, like failure was not an option.
I so relate to that. But I've had a really interesting relationship with failure. But ultimately I can say that I look back and it was the fear of failure that kept me going forward. Is it such a negative thing?
I don't think so. Like it used to be crippling to the point where like I wouldn't even want to start. But I think for the most part it's been like my driving force, and so there's a part of me that's grateful for it, because I think without that I wouldn't be as far along as I am today. So I think it's like a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, totally. So take me back all the way to your childhood. Like, was it obvious when you were a little girl that you would end up where you are today in terms of your STEM career?
No, I don't think so. I'm an only child, so I was definitely like the kid that had imaginary friends and played by themselves and played with Barbies and dolls. But I guess like school related, I don't really remember this, but my mom as an encouraging thing likes to tell me that like when I don't remember the grades, but I was held back. So I think whatever like the introductory grade was for math or algebra, like I was held back because I wasn't able to do the math. And so I was held back for it because basic math was really hard for me, like fractions and decimals. Like for some reason, and like word problems, like I just wasn't able to see the necessary stuff for it. So I was actually in this thing, it's like Sylvan Learning Center. I don't know if they still have them anymore, but it was like a math program. Like I was in a math program for a really long time in high school for tutoring because like I wasn't able to grasp like just the basic math of stuff. So like this honestly where I am today was not even in my head that I would be here because just like, and like I said, like science did not come easily to me.
And so as a little girl, just in terms of like the things you used to do, the toys you used to play with, was it obvious that you would end up in the career choice that you have? Because, for example, I was really into Lego. I just loved building things. And so did you have any obvious signs as a young girl that you would end up in the career you have today?
No, I was definitely the Barbies and dolls girl. I loved dressing my Barbies and creating stories for my Barbies. And I did have Legos, but it was like the Legos that had the pre-constructed design. So it was like, I was also into video games, like Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. I read a lot. It was all like fantasy and nothing. Like, I think I tried reading, oh man, I'm totally blanking on is it 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea? And like, I got really lost in like the technical and mathematical aspects of that.
But I have to say, I do see a link because you talked about, nursing and basically caring about people's health. I mean, that's what your career is about today. I mean, you're so technically in depth with that, but essentially the fundamentals are the same, is that you care about keeping people well.
It's true. I like the idea of being of service to the world, I guess, in some way, which saying it out loud sounds cheesy, but I don't, maybe it's not, but I just feel like it's something that I can do like on a global level to be of service, especially when I feel like the world is in kind of a state of chaos right now. I feel like, and I just, with so much going on in so many different areas, it's like the something that I can do on a larger level.
The career you have today must involve a lot of mathematical thinking. So it's really inspiring to think that, you struggled with it, but now you're using it probably a lot. So
when I was like in high school, I had very like mathematically intelligent friends. So they were all in like the upper division physics classes and like college algebra classes, and they were taking like the AP classes to get into everything. And I just wasn't on that level. Like I failed my first algebra class in high school, and I had to retake it over the summer and got an A. But yeah, like math, like also geometry too, because like for some reason like conceptual things just don't come to me easily either, which is why like I have such a hard time with word problems. So I have such a hard time conceptualizing and visualizing those things. So sometimes I would have an easier time with algebra, like when I would finally get it, because it was like very literal and very straightforward. And I actually ultimately really liked that about math, was that there was no like, well, maybe this is the right answer, maybe this is the right answer. There's just one right answer. And that's kind of the thing that I like about science too. It's not ambiguous, like this is what it is. And I really like that. And so I think I idealized the sciences. Like I always thought like that was so cool and like that was where I wanted to go, which is why like I wanted to be a doctor, because like I thought that's like the ultimate thing is to be like a medical doctor, because it's, I don't know, like at a younger age it wasn't like I wasn't really thinking about it except like, wow, being a doctor sounds really cool. But also I just thought being a scientist was really cool, like that aspect of life was really cool. But unfortunately, I think to my own self-doubt, and again, I think my dad was coming from a place of not wanting to me ultimately be like disappointed. But at the same time, it's not really the best thing to say to somebody that you can't do it. So there was like a combination of things that kept me away from it. And like, I'm grateful that like when I did go to college, like right out of high school, I had no idea what I was doing. Like I was a journalism major and it just wasn't, I think I was just so burned out from high school or something, and it just wasn't where I wanted to be. And so like I dropped out. And after a while, like when I realized that I did want to go back to school, because like school was where, I wanted to be. I was a much better student than I was even in high school, like because I was there for myself. I felt like it wasn't just like the next step, like the something that you had to do next. I think again, like I thought nursing because I thought it was a lower bar than being a doctor. But I realize now, like, nurses have to go through the same exact schooling that doctors do. So I don't know why. I don't know why my head was like, oh yeah, no, that'll be easier. But like, I went back to school because I thought being a nurse and being of service was where I wanted to be at. Then I had like this close up encounter with this woman who had fallen on the street and had like cut her eyebrow with her glasses, and like there was just blood all over the place. And I realized that like it was just freaking me out, and I realized that blood was not something I could actually be up close and personal with. So like she was kind of like this guiding force in my life that was like, okay, you should probably think about something else. I know, it was so crazy. I was totally like freaking out, but like, so it was kind of like, okay, this isn't going to work for you. But I had an experience like in a chemistry class where I just loved it, like, because it was like a basic chemistry class, but there was a lot of math involved in it. But for some reason it was like, so that it didn't come easily to me. Like, again, like a lot of this stuff doesn't come easily to me, like even now. Like it takes a lot of work, but like it was like once I would finally understand it, like the math that was involved in it, like once I would finally get it, like in this basic chemistry class, it was just like this feeling of like, I don't know, it was just a connection that I had to the science and the math of it that just was really encouraging for me, that okay, I got it, like I understand it. And like I can't really, because it was a while ago, so I can't really understand or describe what that moment was. But like it didn't, again, I guess I just emphasized, like it didn't come easily. Like I had to sit and work at it, but you know, I got it because I guess there was like a different understanding around the math that's just like basic math. For microbiology, or like where I'm at right now, they don't actually require, like calculus 1 was the highest math that I had to take. But it was interesting because like as math got harder, I got better at it. I don't know. Maybe that's because like I overcomplicate things, and so like taking overly complicated math was easier for me. But I always still had like a hard time with like the basic algebra of stuff. So like when I got to calculus, you know, I really struggled to get an, you know, a good grade in that class because I understood the calculus, but the algebra aspect of stuff was really killing me. But again, it was just with hard work. I definitely got tutors and stuff like that, you know, but I think it was definitely that driving force of like, I'm also a type A student and like, am willing to do anything to get that grade, which was not something I was before. Like, I think honestly, that might be one of the main differences, is that again, I was there for myself. And this is what something I had decided that I wanted to do. But then as I was moving along in chemistry, like I honestly don't remember the exact thing that got me interested in viruses and bacteria. I think this actually might be really silly, but I remember watching like whatever like that third non Matt Damon Jason Bourne movie was, and like there was a character in it that was like a virologist. She had a PhD in virology, and I thought that sounded really cool because I was already interested in viruses. So I looked into it, and I think that was that moment where I realized like, why not? Because like at first I was kind of like, wait a minute, like there's no way that I could get like a PhD in virology, like that's like so beyond what I'm doing. But then it's really not like that much farther.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, like it's just like,
It's so awesome that you were having like this kind of like debate with yourself. Like, I really want to get a PhD in virology, but why not? I mean, but I can't, but why not?
you know, it's definitely like that internal, always the internal thing. But I'm glad that it won out, because like I think it's like the thing like that over time, you know, the facts were there that it wasn't beyond me to do that. You know, because even though like I wasn't getting perfect grades in math, you know, I'm not gonna lie, but like, you know, the science classes were came a little bit more easily to me, you know, and I was getting like A's and B's, and so it just became like this thing of like, you know, it can't be, you know.
Yeah, I love the fact that you've just said that, because listening to you, it just doesn't, I'm not convinced that you couldn't do this and that. Like, it really sounds like it was a lot of self-belief or lack of it that was holding you back. And I must say that hearing your story, it sounds as though you were very much self-driven. Actually, why don't you complete the story? Like, what did that lead to, and where are you today?
And the program that I was looking at, I saw molecular microbiology and immunology, and that was offering a very specific look at virology and human disease, and it was everything that I wanted, that I thought would make a good basis for epidemiology. And I think, it sounds like a mouthful, like, and it sounds like it's like a lot, but honestly, it's just willing to do the work. And I think the semester that I'm going into right now, because I'm almost done, so it actually took me like 6 years to get this point, because I took classes only a couple at a time because I wanted to make sure that I could give each one the focus that I felt like they needed, like on my end, so that I could get that good grade and get that understanding. And it's only like this semester that I'm going into that like terrified of the semester going into it, like, if that makes sense. Just because it's like finally sunk in that it is about the hard work and the willingness to put into the time. And I feel like it took me a while to get to this zen point of like it's all about the work, but it really is. And so I get to graduate next year, and I'm looking at taking the GREs this summer to go for my master's in epidemiology.
Wow. So awesome. Yeah, your story just fills me with hope because the driving force behind all of it was that you were following what really interested you. And it seems to have been a lot of self-drive in that. But were there any other role models or people that inspired you?
Unfortunately, I'm going to say no, but I think that's only because I don't know, like, I don't think that there aren't that many, which is why I think like you're putting out this podcast and like this idea, because I think, like, so for me, I went to a STEM panel that was being held at my community college like a while ago, and it was supposed to be like one person from each section of like the STEM programs, and it was all men. And so it was just kind of like, I don't think there was anything out there that was like an actual role model for me to look at. I think besides the women that I saw in the movie, and I thought that was like a cool job. Because honestly, nothing's really sticking out in my mind as like a prominent figure.
I guess you really were just following your interest and your heart then to get to where you are today.
I had support, like I definitely had, which I think is as important. Like my mom has definitely been my biggest cheerleader, which is good, and I've had support, I have support from all those around me. So even my dad is proud of me. Like, he's definitely a little surprised, but not like verbally so. I think he just mentioned it once that he didn't expect that I'd be here because of the math, but not like in a bad way. Um, he's been supportive, so.
Yeah, how important has that support been?
Really important, honestly. I think, because like there are definitely moments when like like I am in this place of like, yeah, it's all about the hard work, and I'm in this place of like, here I am, and but the journey has been really like I honestly, I remember there's this one class where I had this professor. It was also a chemistry class, like it was the second part of like a chemistry grouping of classes, and like I would cry while studying because I found it to be so hard, and like the teacher was hard, and like, and then there were definitely moments of like self doubt, even like that I am not like these other students that are in this class who I just felt like science has always been like their thing, or science, they're pre med and they're like 18, and it's just like what they're doing. And so I don't know, there's just been a lot of comparison of like, well, I'm not like that, well, I'm totally not like that, because sometimes, and I just feel like, what am I doing? Like, I feel like a fraud. Sometimes I feel like I'm not supposed to be here. Like, I remember when I was was transitioning from community college to like, I want to say college, I guess, but like, I was so scared. Like, I was so scared that I was just going to be surrounded by people who were meant to be there, and who was I? And sometimes I have that feeling of like, when I get a job, like when I actually become an epidemiologist, I feel like I'm going to be a fraud. Like, I don't know. It's just like this feeling of like, I'm not meant to be here. Because sometimes, I still compare my mind, like, I do have an interest in science, but I'm still that person that reads like fantasy books and stuff like that. So it's like sometimes I do compare my mental space to other people's mental spaces.
So is it almost like feeling guilty that you've got other interests and skills?
Um, I don't know. I think it's that feeling of being a fraud because like I don't know if it's so much more the interest in skills, but it's like that's not where I started. I guess if that makes sense. Like because, I'm a little bit older than people that I'm in school with, and so sometimes it makes me like it's just like another level or things don't come to me that easily. Like again, like things don't come to me as easily as maybe they come to other people. Like it takes me a longer time to work on it and get to it. And sometimes it takes me a really long time to like keep concepts in my head. Like even so classes when they build upon each other and the science builds upon each other, it's like sometimes I fault for myself for not remembering the stuff that I took like years and years ago. In my head I go, well, a real scientist. So it's just that kind of thought. Like I think I just fault the way that I think about things, compared to like I guess what a quote unquote real scientist, whatever that looks like,
Yeah.
thinks about things.
My gosh, it's so fascinating because I wonder where you get your real scientist in air quotes kind of vision from.
Right?
I mean, what does a real scientist look like to you?
No, like Albert Einstein. I don't know, like I guess it's like, you know, that super genius that just I don't know, creates new theories and comes up with new models of life. But again, it's like comparing my insides to people's outsides. So it just looks like other people have it all together and know what's going on. Like maybe they don't.
But how do you deal with the self doubt when it does crop up?
It's definitely been a work in progress because it used to be crippling. Like again, I cried, but actually, I feel like I don't know if I answered your support group answer, but like that's why it's good to have a support group because like I'm constantly questioning, and then constantly having people remind me that I've been in this place before and I got through it. So I think it's like it pops up, but I think the thing that I have to remind myself is that I guess like past experience has to be something that I remind myself with, but also like there's just no room for that in my life right now.
What, the self doubt?
Yeah, like I don't like it comes up. Sometimes I get to go like no, like this we don't have time for this. Like you don't have time for this kind of thing. And then sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but it's just like the process of, cuz it is constant. It is constant because like it is like I think it's unfortunately yeah, definitely me comparing myself to what I think whatever that image of the quote unquote scientist that doesn't even really exist is, and it might always be constant, but I think the thing that it doesn't get to stop me.
And I wonder what exactly is it that keeps you going? Because it sounds like you've been through a lot of self reflection. Like, what ultimately are you aiming for?
I think just worked so hard to get to this point that it's like I want to say it's more than just like proving to myself that I can do it. But I want success in this field. Like, for me, success is always the ultimate goal. Like, I want to be the top of, whatever the epidemiology field is. I just want to successfully complete this journey that I'm on, I guess, is like what it is. So I think honestly it's definitely the fear of failure, but also it's more that like somewhere along the way this became like this is what I want to do and this is what I want my life to be. And I guess thankfully, despite in the face of like continuous daily self-doubt, I do have that thought process that there is no other option. This is the option, and there is no other option.
And so, what does a successful life look like to you? I mean, have you planned for your future? Do you know, can you answer that question of like, what do you want in 5 years, 10 years? Or is this not something that you want to consider?
I think in the abstract, I know what I want to do in 5 years. I haven't looked at it very closely, only because I think also one of the things that I've learned up to this point is that any plans that I've actually made for myself, I'm not anywhere I thought I was going to be. Like no part of my path or no part of my journey was anything that I had like structured out for myself, so I do believe that a higher power has basically knocked down any, because like anything that I set up for myself in like a really structured way has, and I'm grateful for that, because like nothing from point A to point B was what I thought it was going to be. So my abstract plan for myself is that I would love to work at the CDC and these people called viral detectives, and like they go out and investigate outbreaks and infectious disease, and that's what I want to do. Like for me, that would be what success looks like, is doing that and being like one of the top people that they send to different countries to be a liaison with the governments there and help figure out solutions.
That sounds really exciting and ambitious, and it actually really sounds in line with what you had always aspired to do from early on in your life, in terms of like helping people and being of service to the world. But what about the bigger picture of being a woman? What does having it all mean to you?
Oh man, I honestly don't know if I've ever really thought about it. I think sometimes, I guess like it would just be like proof that like as a woman we can be the tops of those fields as well. Because I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the science classes and a lot of the stories I've heard about what it takes to like I guess get to those points is like stuff that I really haven't kept in my mind, because I don't want it to be something that like I don't want it to be like a barrier. Like again, like just one more thing that becomes like this worry of like as a female in this field, like what is that going to look like for me, and how do I, and what will be the roadblocks? Because I have heard it's very hard for females to get mentors, which is something that I'll need as like in a master's program. I've heard that it's hard for females to get mentors, and I've heard that it's mostly men that are in these situations and stuff like that. So it's, I guess that's the only aspect of like what it means to be a female and like what that would look like. That's the only
What are
thought
your
process that's
views
come into my head.
on
But I honestly, I've never really thought specifically about being a woman, I guess in the sciences. Weirdly, I don't know.
the larger picture of all the different aspects of life? Because it's not all just about science, is it?
I think right now it is career based, but more and more I have been thinking about and family. I'm very blessed because I do have a husband who is one of my main supporters, and like in this part of my life he's been very willing to go where I go, kind of thing. What I need to do is what he's willing to support, because he's already gone through school and is already like in his career. So I get to have like, I guess, that little aspect of family along with the science. I think selfishly though, I have thought about like, okay, so traveling and all that will be a part of my career, hopefully. Like that is what I want. So I think selfishly I haven't really thought about what that would look like for the greater family aspect. And as for children, more and more I have been thinking about having like what where children fit in, because as it stands, like I'm going to be in school for a little bit and then I would like to establish like a career before bringing a child into that, just so that I would have like a financial basis for that. I know women who are successful at that. Like my husband's mom would be my greatest example, because she got her master's in nursing with two children, like two full grown children, and like unfortunately not like a husband that was all that supportive. But she did it. Like I don't think it was easy, but it was something that she wanted and she did it. I think it just depends. Like I am also of the thought process that along with the why not, like I think as a woman, just because we want like a life in science doesn't mean that we can't also have, I don't want to say domestic aspect, but I feel like, doesn't mean that we can't also be women and want like to be married and have a husband. Like, I think it's like we get to have it all. Like, just because we're a woman doesn't mean it's one or the other. I think, like men, we get to have it all. Like, if we want it all, we get to have it all.
Do you think being in STEM is compatible with having a family? Because, you know, most of the STEM careers that I hear about require a huge amount of studying. I mean, is that even compatible with having a family?
Not right now. Like, because I guess it's just in my head that I think maybe it's naive, maybe, or maybe not, but it's just in my head that, like, one day I get to have that gift. I don't know. When the time comes, like, that will be an option for me.
So, are there things that you specifically have to do or things that you're aware of in order to have it all?
I do. Yeah, I don't think there is a distinction for men and women, I guess. Like, I think that's because, like, I am surrounded by women who are intelligent in different fields of STEM. So I think I've just never thought about it as not being a woman's field. I actually am working in a research lab right now with only women.
It's interesting because you might just be at a time in your life where this isn't something you need to think about. And it's so fascinating talking to women of different ages because some people are really having to consider it and some women are not thinking about it at all. So do you feel that your chosen career in microbiology is something that is a good career choice for a woman?
That was something that I'd heard. So I don't know if that's actually the situation. The gender balance is that there's definitely more men than women in my classes. But, like, again, like, it's interesting because the research lab that I work in, I work with all women, and my lab manager is a female. But it's a male doctor whose lab that we work in. But, he's very generous and very open. And so it hasn't been like an oppressive male force, I think, on my education. I don't know. It hasn't been something that I've had to consider. But to your question, I would say that I think, like, for engineering, and like that includes like computer sciences, because one of my best friends is a female and she wants to be like, she was in engineering, like she started out considering like computer programming and stuff like that and like switched to like bioengineering, or biotech, but she was like the only female in a lot of the programming classes, and she did experience like men were not nice to her, like even her male, like the teacher was very condescending with her. Something that I've been conscious of is like, so I'm blonde and I have gotten the stereotype that I'm stupid, which is the only thing I've ever been conscious of. Is that my teachers would just automatically assume that I was stupid and would actually talk to me like I was stupid until like I proved myself. But even then, I was treated like the dumb blonde in class. And unfortunately, like in my earlier classes, not so much now because maybe it's because it's like upper division classes, but a lot of my earlier classes, I actually surprisingly found that the most like it was with other women, like because like the other women wouldn't be very generous with other women. Like it was this competition for, I don't want to say male attention, but like it was this competition within like the female groupings, which I found to be very bizarre because it was like, we're all in this together, but they would be very like antagonistic. Like not just to me, but like, to other women, which is not something I've experienced recently, actually. It was just like in a couple of classes that I had when in community college. So maybe that was just like, I don't know, maybe that was what was going on there. And I haven't experienced it recently, but that's like the most. That's like, those are the kind of experiences I've had as a woman in microbiology. But with my upper division classes, I haven't had any of those experiences with other women.
You've had to face a lot of challenges along the way. What advice would you give to any young girls who are considering going into microbiology or similar fields? Like, what would you do differently given your experience and hindsight today?
My advice would just have to start with, why not you? I don't know if I would do anything differently because I think each step of the way led to where I am now. So it might have been like not the most desirable road traveled because it did take a minute. to get where I am. But I think it took like each step of the way to have like the understanding that I have today. And like, this is where I want to be, because again, I think that's why I'm just so like focused, is because like this is the outcome that I'm working towards, is the outcome that I've worked really hard for, kind of thing. And again, I think that's my advice also, is like, I think it's people's inner voices that stop them from succeeding like way too much, because like, I'm going to say like 95% of the time our inner voices are not correct. Our inner voices are just, society, and self-doubt. And that's not something that should be listened to. If it doesn't come easily, like that doesn't mean anything. Like that doesn't mean that this isn't where you should be. It just means that you're going to have to work harder than the person next to you, kind of thing. But if it's something that you want, why not you? Is what I would have to say to that.
I love that message. I think maybe some girls might listen to that and go, but if it's hard, maybe that's the universe telling me that it's not for me. So, how do you tell the difference between something that is not meant for you and something that's just really, really tough?
I think the difference has to be how you feel about it. Yeah, I guess that would be the difference, because like if it's really hard and you're just like hating every step of the way, like then don't do it.
I guess it's keeping an eye on the end goal, which is just because you're not good at math, or it doesn't mean that you can't be a successful microbiologist. Because I think often we, as women in STEM, have such high expectations for ourselves, and we think if we're not perfect at everything, then maybe this isn't the right career choice.
Oh yeah, I guess it was just like it was a means to an end. The math wasn't really an option of whether or not to take it. It was just like, well, I had to take it in order to do the thing that I wanted to do.
It sounds like you faced so much adversity, but it also does sound that you really are genuinely interested in what you're doing.
I am, and I think that has to be, I guess that would have to be the thing, because for me, it's not, I guess this is the one time where it's like, it's not about the journey, because there are definitely classes that I've had to take that I just totally hated. And I just thought they were so boring, and like the hard work totally sucked. But for me, like, it just has to be what I take in order to get to the end goal. Like I can't meet the end goal without doing the stuff in between. So yeah, I think it hasn't really been an option for me. Like even though if it's been hard and like I hated it, it was something that I had to do in order to get to the end goal. So I guess like that would have to be the thing, is like you just weigh the end goal, because like I think like again with like all the steps in my journey, I've been lucky enough to have stumbled upon something in all of like, my changing of ideas of where I wanted to go, something that I was like truly and genuinely interested in, and where I wanted to be. So I think that I was lucky enough to find that, so that the stuff that was in between and totally like not what I wanted to be doing was still bearable, because it wasn't an option not to do it, I guess. So
I don't know what the exact numbers are of the gender balance in microbiology, but generally there are less women in STEM compared to guys. What would be your thoughts on why that is?
I think that's that societal thing. That I think we're working to changing, the image of now is that that's for men, and like the soft sciences, like psychology and stuff like that, are for women, or art is for women, or, domesticity is for women, and like the harder stuff is for men. Because unfortunately, I think that's the stuff that's like cultivated from a really young age, and like not so much in the media anymore. Because I think right now I think there's a lot of effort to work towards changing that. But I think it's just from a really young age, it's been instilled in us that like, girls play with Barbies and guys play with like connector sets. I think it's something that's being changed now, more and more, but I think unfortunately it's definitely like a societal thing that's kept women out, from men. And I think it's definitely like a boys, what is that saying? Like it's like a boys club or something. Because that was one of the things that I was talking about with like what I had heard about mentoring, was it was harder for women to find mentors because men didn't want to work with women because they were intimidated by what that meant. Or like it was definitely like men would choose men to work with kind of thing.
As a woman in STEM, you're already, just by being in STEM, you're very inspiring because of your strength and tenacity to have stuck by what you are interested in. But what would be your top 5 sort of characteristics or pieces of advice based on your experiences in STEM for pursuing a career in STEM?
I guess determination, persistence. Like I think you can't really think about like all the possibilities of like what could go wrong, because I think that just becomes like a deterrent. A certain level of trust in yourself, that you do deserve to be here just as much as anybody else. And then I guess a certain level of courage. There's a lot out there that works against us, I think. And it has to be the courage to overcome whatever each next thing is. Even the courage to like overcome our own thought processes, and to know that like you are where you should be, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a young girl sort of considering a career in STEM and I heard you talk about those characteristics, I would be like, yeah, maybe I could develop those characteristics. But my big question mark would be why? Why develop those kind of characteristics? Like, what are the main things you're getting out of the career you're in?
Again, I think this is just where, I don't know, this is where I want to be. So I think, I don't know how to really answer that question, I guess, because this is where I want to be and there's no other option. I think it always just comes back to that. It's like, there's not really another option for me right now because this is what I've decided that I want to be. This is where I decided I want to be and it feels right. And that's why I'm working so hard and working against my own thought processes, and working against like, what I feel like are outside, stigmas, I guess. Because within myself, this is what I've decided that I want, and it's pretty solid. I guess the basis for all of that has to be pretty solid, like that this is what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's, it's a very, very clear message. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as that. Like, I'm in STEM because it just feels right. And, I don't want to be anywhere else. I mean, if someone has that feeling towards a subject in STEM, I think they should really follow that because often what gets in the way is other people's opinions of them doing that. And those opinions shouldn't count.
Exactly. Yeah, it has to be what you personally want to do, not what anybody else wants. Because I think that was what was getting in my way early on in life, was because like I went into college thinking it was like, I went into college because like that's what my family expected me to do. But like when I was there, I completely had no idea what was going on, and I was a terrible student. And then when I came back, I was there for myself. And that's where I knew I wanted to be, and I was where I wanted to be, and that's why I'm working so hard now to get to where I want to be, because I know, like, within me, like, it is a solid foundation for everything else, that this is exactly what I should be doing and where I want to be. When somebody else wants it for you, like, I don't think it has the same meaning. I don't know, because, yeah. I think it has to be something that you want for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome message to end on. It's just been so incredible getting to hear your story and finding out about your journey in STEM. Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with us about what you've been up to.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
That's it from our STEM guest this week. Wow, I'm just so amazed that someone could have struggled so much with math and maybe their levels of self-belief, and to pull through all of that and be doing something that sounds so complicated, but this idea of being deeply fascinated by something and really following your passion is a message that is so fundamental to going into STEM. Thanks so much for listening this week. I'll catch you next week on Scilence.